What's up, modern craftsmen and women? Today we have Mark D. Williams from Mark D. Williams Custom Homes. He's an award-winning builder from the Twin Cities, creating quality custom homes and remodelers. You might also know him from the Curious Builder podcast. He's also a previous guest on this podcast. And today we're going to talk about everything that you wouldn't expect. Let's just start there. I think that we're going to talk about health and wellness, which is continuing to be more and more of a focus for our industry, and I think just life in general, which I love. He has since, grown the Curious Builder podcast into what he calls collectives. He's got a sauna camp going. He's got boot camps going. We talk about the depression and anxiety and how you almost fuel ourselves with the thinking, as you put it, Tyler, right? Like it's the thinking that is what kills us, not necessarily the thought.
Yeah, from the day I met Mark, he is just an absolute ball of energy. I have always said he's basically the opposite of me. But it's a really good conversation today. We dig into everything. We dig into business-related topics, marriage, the difference between introverts, extroverts, spirituality, struggles with customers, how to accept mortality within your life. The conversation really spans so many different topics, but I think that there's a lot of really good takeaways, and everyone's going to enjoy this conversation.
Hey guys, you know the deal. Before we get into this podcast, a big thank you to our sponsors for the 2025 season. Andersen Windows, of course. Builders and contractors agree that Andersen is the window and door brand with fewer callbacks. Don't let hidden costs of callbacks, bad reviews, or racked windows set you back. Vinyl windows might seem cheaper up front, but their 100 series products are the sneaky value play thanks to their lasting quality. They also have a modular design for easy installs, saving you valuable time.
Fewer callbacks can lead to more 5-star reviews, and that can help you make sure your business is built to last. Plus, there's always Andersen's 10-year limited warranty on finish and fading on top of the Andersen Pro program to help make your business even more resilient. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/moderncraftsman.
And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the grind. And as home builders, we know the grind. So as Buildertrend would say, between juggling jobs, managing budgets, and keeping clients happy, planning for the future often gets pushed aside. But here's the thing. Success isn't luck. It's all based on strategy.
With Buildertrend's free strategic planning template, made in partnership with Breakthrough Academy, you'll get a step-by-step guide to set clear goals, align your team, and start 2025 with confidence. Whether you're aiming to grow your revenue, streamline operations, or scale faster, this template is your roadmap. Don't just dream big, build big by downloading it today at buildertrend.com/MC planning template.
We know the best type of referrals are word of mouth. And when Velux skylights go in, word of your business will get out. Because adding skylights to your project improves the look of any space and impresses your clients and gets them talking.
Everything looks better in natural light. So when their space looks this amazing, you look brilliant. Velux skylights are easy to install and come with an industry-first 10-year product and installation warranty, giving you eye-catching spaces backed by the reliability of the Velux brand. Find the right skylight for your build at veluxusa.com/remodeler.
I just hit record, so we're just going to roll into this. It's funny. When you just, what you just said is like, when you're like talking about me, when I'm quiet, I'm just in, I don't even know what double swear word you're talking about, but
I don't know either. I don't swear enough to have a double swear word, so this is just me.
Wait, do you not swear at all?
I'll make up for it.
Like,
no, not really.
You do, like, is it something?
Yeah. No, I mean, I swear when I like stub my toe, or like I swear to myself on the tennis court. But I don't swear out loud in front of other people. Because it's a cuss word, because you're not supposed to, because my mom told me not to. I got my mouth washed out with Irish Springs when I was 6, and I never forgot the taste.
I'm not judging you. I actually,
no, you're curious.
Yeah, it's like
I'm all about curiosity here.
And I asked because I literally I didn't say a single swear word until I was in high school.
Oh wow!
And,
Look at you, late bloomer.
Late bloomer. And
Tyler's I got this down.
Yeah, I think
I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it was my girlfriend at the time in high school basically convinced me.
Okay.
And that's what got me to swear, and then since then I just have a fucking terrible mouth.
Tilly has a terrible mouth.
Really? Your daughter?
She's our younger one. She does it to get a rise out of people.
Smart.
But when she was little, we did the soap trick and we worked our way to liquid soap. But she was so bad, she would curse and then just come over to us and like ask for the soap.
No way.
Yeah, when she was like very little.
Holy smokes, that's next level. Impressive. She's like a sailor.
Even now,
put the bleach in my mouth.
And I'm like, Tilly, you can't. Well, you don't want to laugh, but it's so funny in that because she uses it perfect. She was on her hoverboard the other day and she's just messing around, and Rachel was kind of hassling Selby, and Tilly just goes, "Jesus Christ, Selby." And I was like trying not to laugh because she used it perfectly. But I'm like, you can't say that because you're going to get in the habit of saying it and it's going to come out at school and everyone's going to think you're a terrible kid. But at home, she definitely lets her freak flag fly.
Well,
my kid learned the whole, I think it was Reed. He was like, he the other day, he was like, cheese and rice. And I was like, what? He goes, oh, it's instead of saying Jesus Christ, I just say cheese and rice.
That's amazing.
And I was like, did you make that up?
It's funny. So everyone, so much of this, I'm sure, is affected by your childhood and your upbringing, obviously, and then later on your choices. But like I say a lot of filler words. So like the other day, I grew up reading Louis L'Amour book tapes when I was lawn mowing and reading the books. They're Western series if you haven't listened to them. But it was Mother of Pearl is a type of on your pearl handled Colt. If you were a baller 6-gun shooter back in 1400s, you had Mother of Pearl. So sometimes rather than saying mother, I'd say Mother of Pearl. And what's hilarious, which makes no sense, but it does. That's why it came from. But what's funny is when you have a 4-year-old walking around the house and then they model your behavior. And my 4-year-old would be like, Mother of Pearls. And I'm like, what is happening? And the other day, because I said, I stop myself as best I can because I don't want to. But like sometimes I'll say like, what the, and I'll just stop. I won't say the filler word. And it dawned on me the other day that like all my kids are going to be like profuse of swearers because they all walk around the house. They'll do something bad and they'll go, what the, but they stop. They mimic my behavior, but it's like setting them up for just like world-class, start.
Have you ever seen Moana?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Many times.
Hey, hey.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now like, that's what we say at home. What the hey, hey.
Okay. That's pretty funny actually.
And the kids
Hey's the dumb chicken, right?
Yeah. The dumb chicken.
Yeah.
The
you guys seen 2? Have you seen 2?
I have not seen 2 yet.
Yeah, we went to the movies and saw it. I wasn't that impressed.
Meg took every one of the movies and was like, hey, will you stay home with Nixon? I'm like, you're going to play on your phone. I watch the movies.
It wasn't as good as 1.
Think of the golden age of movies that our kids are in. I mean,
oh my God.
I mean, it's incredible. Like I'm excited to see them, even if they're not.
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
Yeah, you can wait for that one to come out. My kids, my Selby saw Wicked 3 times in the theater.
Wicked's good.
3 times.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it.
And now they own it. I'm like, and they listen.
They own it on Netflix and Amazon.
And then they listen to the soundtrack all the time. And I'm like, all right, I'm all Wicked out.
I don't remember being a kid and watching the same movie over and over, but they'll watch, like we had a couple lazy days a couple weeks ago, and they literally watch the same movie on repeat all day. I'm like,
yeah, we also didn't have the ability to do that because you had to own the movie, and then there's generally only one TV in the house, so you would fight about it.
Yeah.
Like now, even just being able to put on whatever you want to listen to, like we couldn't do that. You had to you couldn't just listen to whatever you wanted to. It was whatever the heck came on the radio.
Yeah, I remember listening to the radio, and I'd have like the tape in the spot where you'd hit record so you could record the song.
Yeah.
And it's like you'd hear the DJ. It's like, all right, that song's coming up next. And you're like timing it.
That's so funny. I still have my old mixtapes. I think I gave a lot of them away. I used to have a lawn mowing business in high school, and so I used to have all these mixed music. I had the little yellow Walkman, and to your point, Nick, I would record. I used to like oldies, so it was like Cool 108, and it was like the Beach Boys or whatever oldie stuff was on, and so you'd run over and but then you'd make like your best mixtape and you'd give them away. Now, like I know there's probably memes on this stuff, but it is kind of funny to look back. And now with subscription services, like I remember I kept every single Louis L'Amour book tape I ever had. I mean, I probably spent thousands of dollars because I literally had hundreds of them. You could buy them all now for like $9 and have them all digitally, way better anyway. But it is kind of this like spot in my memory that I have very nostalgia for, and I was like, I used to love that.
So you were in high school mowing lawns, making oldies mixtapes. You were probably just slaying the women.
No. I wore sweatpants till 8th grade. I remember my mom came and said, hey, other kids in high school are wearing jeans. I'm like, jeans? Like sweatpants are so comfortable. It wasn't until college that sweatpants got cool again. But no, I was so not into, I had no lady game. In fact, that's what makes me really good at sales. I've been told no so much by the time I got out of college that no was just a normal objection. Like that was easy. More people say no. So, there you go.
I guess at the end of the day, you are from Minnesota.
I don't know what that has to do with anything, but okay.
I feel like rocking sweatpants. You probably eating lake fish.
That's true. We had the snap bracelets. People would slit the wrist, and then they said you couldn't wear them in school anymore. Actually, I don't know. Have your daughter? My daughter's gotten into snap bracelets. Do they have those out on the East Coast now?
Yeah, there's a few.
You mean the things that are made of old tape measures?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's so funny. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah.
They break about as often as a tape measure too.
Yeah. Reed's like a big sweatpant kid. And the other day we went somewhere and it was like, Reed, you need to wear khakis. Like you gotta wear something nicer. And he came downstairs, he went upstairs, got changed, came back down and put sweatpants on that had like cargo pockets. He goes, what about these?
So those are just like, swargos.
Yeah, those are not khakis.
Those are swargos. Dude, I don't think I owned a pair of sweatpants until Rachel got me sweatpants like a year or two ago.
Yeah, same.
Whoa.
I never had sweatpants.
You guys know what Zubas are or what they were?
Nope.
Seriously? So back, I don't know the wrestling scene that well, but like the WWE, WWF, way before back in the 80s, there was a Minnesota wrestler. I should know his name. I'm, going to be brutalized in Minnesota for not knowing his name, but he invented essentially sweatpants or like these crazy colors, right?
Yeah.
And they were huge. I remember having Zubas, going to middle school and high school with Zubas, but they, now they've made a comeback.
Yeah, they're like, I feel like they're like bright colors and have like either lightning or tiger stripes on.
100%.
Oh yeah.
It's like if the Bengals, went and got everything tie-dyed with Charger colors.
Yeah.
I don't think I know a single person in my life that has ever worn these.
That's like
now you
that's
do.
like, what is that? Early
do.
90s?
Yeah, that was late 80s, early 90s. Now you do, Nick. It's Mark Williams. That's who. I actually need a pair of
You should bring them back.
Tell you what, I am after this episode.
Maybe you can get them to sponsor you.
Oh, unlike
you can
Red
get
Bull,
them on
they might
Temu
respond.
for
They might
$14.
respond. Unlike Red Bull.
That's amazing.
All right.
Well, I know that you and Nick had spoken offline about what you have going on your end of things, and I think what Nick wanted to speak about, and I think what you have going on is of interest to a lot of people, and something that we could dive into, whether it is like the physical well-being, mental health, the sauna camp that you're putting on. I think it'll be somewhat of a change of pace, and then also important for people to hear.
Yeah. I mean, you want me to just dive right now?
Nick, what specifically?
Well, I think it's funny, like you opened up our conversation right before I hit record about me being quiet. And like that's, usually when I'm head down, and I would say more often than not, I feel I'm probably harder on myself than I need to be, which, is probably good and bad. But it's usually when I'm struggling with something and I'm like, all right, all my attention needs to be here and I need to focus on this, and I will come back to that later on. And Tyler and I do a fair amount of talking, obviously off, even, specifically offline. And even yesterday, I'm like, dude, Tyler, like I'm fucking struggling, man. Like this is just brutal. I'm dealing with this. Like it shouldn't be this way. I need to correct it. And Tyler, I forget what you said, but you basically was like, why don't you remind me what you said? Because it was something about
that book that I was reading.
Yeah, The Objective Truth.
Yeah, so I was reading. I have to look up what the name of the book is called. I recently got it, and it was a pretty quick read. But then I keep it in the bathroom because you could just like sit there and catch up 10 minutes at a time. And it's kind of like I use it more as a daily affirmation type of book, even though it wasn't intended that way. But it's something about like you're not what you're thinking or something like that. And it essentially, my entire life, I struggle with compulsive, perpetual, habitual thinking. And my mom used to call it mental masturbating, where, something happens or there's a truth or there is an experience. And like in the book, it says you're hit with two arrows, right? The first one's unavoidable. That's the pain. The second one is the emotional response to it. And I think throughout my whole life, I didn't realize that I have the initial arrow that hits me, and then the secondary arrow is the one that just sends me on this tailspin. And I can't like free myself from that mental masturbation. And at the end of the day, that's what creates most of the suffering for us. And I was telling Nick that like, you have an experience, you have something that's just a truth, and then you have an emotional reaction to that. And right now you're hung up on the emotional reaction and you're making all of your decisions based on that, when it doesn't really do you any good at the end of the day. And you have to realize that like there's nothing productive that's going to come from just sitting there dwelling and stewing and ruminating the shit of your thinking.
And like on that, it's easy to be like, yeah, of course it doesn't, but I still need to fix the issue. And it reminded me, when you had said that, Tyler, it reminded me of something I read recently, and it talked about the difference between anxiety and depression, and how depression is everything that has already happened.
What was that on?
I don't know. Did it come up on the podcast?
I just talked about that. I don't know if I said it to you, but I heard it. Yeah. I heard it on a podcast, and I was like, damn, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's like depression is everything that has already, like you dwelling on everything that's already happened, and anxiety is you dwelling on everything that might happen. And I was like, holy shit, I have anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's like that's because that's all I think about. It's like, I'm faced with a truth, like, hey, this is the truth, and then I go down this entire like path of like, oh my god, this will kill me. And it's like, but no, it won't. Like, you're already doing the things that you need to do in order to, whether it's react to it or plan to avoid that death, like quote unquote death. But right now you're just stuck on, as Tyler said, like the emotional aspect of it. So all the way back to your point, Mark, it's like, yeah, so I get quiet because I need to work on something. And it's, for me, 2024, there was a lot of, I spent a lot of my year getting a lot of feedback from people that were close to me, people that were, 2 people removed from me, and really trying to understand like what their perception of what I was doing, was it valuable, or was I going in too many different directions? And, unanimously it was like, Nick, you have too many irons in the fire. Like you're not focused on, the thing that matters the most. And so naturally I'm like, all right, let me shed all dead weight and then try to focus on only one thing, and then come to realize like I don't need to focus on one thing, but I do need to focus on the things that are important, and ultimately, delegate the things that, or partner with people, like, work together on something rather than take on the full responsibility of it, because ultimately that's how we move things forward. And good.
Yeah. Well, a couple things on that are the arrow analogy, oddly enough. So probably 3-4 times a week, I fire up the sauna in my backyard, and I'll send out a text to 5-10 guys in the area, other, some runner groups, athlete guys, other builders, and people come over, don't come over, whoever. They come, they don't come, it's open invitation. Anyway, it's become kind of like this clearinghouse of information. You sit in the sauna for, last night was an hour and a half, which was a long one actually.
Holy shit.
and my buddy Seth, we just got into a really good spiritual conversation. And the reason it's it's obviously going to literally promote Sauna Camp, but he came up with this arrow analogy, and he asked me. It was more spiritual advice, but I think it's attuned to what you're both talking about. And he was just saying that, once the arrow is released, the trajectory, the speed, the power, everything has already been set. The arrow is in the air. You can do nothing except as if you are the arrow, the only thing you can do is fly true. And I think what Tyler was speaking to is like the other things like a cross breeze, other things that might impact that arrow's flight. And sometimes, but like we've launched ourselves, like White Oak. I'll talk later in the podcast about this project I'm working on called Misa Hus, which is a light version of what you're doing. I'm pretty excited about it. But anyway, the point is like your arrow has shot on 65 White Oak. Like you are all in, like you're halfway to the target, maybe more. But like there's very few things you can change at this point. Like you have set into motion a long time ago when you release the bow and that arrow's gone. Like your responsibility now in your one thing is to fly true. And it's good to remind yourself, and myself, all of us too, like what is your one thing? And I'm kind of like passionate about this because I actually did a podcast a couple weeks ago about this. Are you familiar with the Japanese term misagi or misogi?
No.
It's one thing. And so they have this philosophy that you pick one thing and your whole year revolves around it. And to me, it's the analogy I like is like the sun. Yeah, there's 9 other planets in the solar system. Yes, I still think Pluto's a planet, and so but the sun is the center thing. And for me, I didn't know I was doing this. I actually did it last year personally. You guys were there because I had to leave, but I did that 50-mile trail race last year, and really the whole of my life, not my life, I shouldn't say that. The whole of most of my last 6-8 months of the summer was all dedicated to that one race. It affected what I ate, when I slept, where I traveled, what I did. It affected my work in a positive way, not a negative way. My favorite quote last year was "Boundaries create freedom," and I was like my drum. That my 2 favorite books were Unreasonable Hospitality, which I got from you, Nick, and we've talked a lot about that already. And I'm blanking on the other one right now, but that was the one that just keeps replaying. Anyway, my point is, it was like the one thing that just kept me going the whole year. And so I've really, for the first time in honestly my life, I took 2 weeks, and we do this every year for the company now. We shut down the company for 2 weeks. I didn't check a single email. I wrote so much stuff down in my journal and wrote. I felt like Tyler writing because I feel like he's a much better writer than I am. And it was so helpful to get everything on paper, to kind of get all that chatter out of my brain. And now I have my 2 misagis for next year. One for my company, which is Misa Hus, which is kind of like a 65 White Oak for me, my first spec home. And then the other is, I'm stupid. I signed up for a 100-mile race because I'm like, well, 50, why not try and double it? So my point is not about that. It's about what is the one thing that will dictate everything else around it. So that's brought a lot of clarity for me and a lot of peace, because I don't now have to make a bunch of future decisions. I've already made 2 decisions that I feel that all the other things that happen this year, both professionally and business, will be wrapped around those 2 things. And I feel very at peace with those things.
One, the book that I was referring to is called "Don't Believe Everything You Think."
Yeah,
by Joseph Nguyen. I actually don't know how to say that last name. I believe it's Vietnamese. And then 2, your 50-mile race. Do you know the guy David Roche who broke like the Leadville record for the 100-mile race?
I don't. I mean, they're all those guys are just extreme ballers.
So, I mean, listen to the podcast that Rich Roll did with him.
Okay.
It's sick. So he's a professional trainer, and he was a college football player at Columbia, and his wife's like in medicine. But he basically, like, without any really long distance or ultra training, beat a 20-year-old record that was held at Leadville by like 16 minutes his first time that he raced it.
I did see that. I just saw it like show up on my feed, but I didn't read all into it. I didn't realize that was his first ultra.
Yeah, and all he had ever done before that was like 2 25-mile races and then a 50. And after he did the 50 in order to get into Leadville. And he basically, like, his strength is that he can run at a very fast pace at a very low heart rate. So he'll run like 120 to 130 heart rate, and he's doing like a 5.5 minute mile.
Jesus.
And he's like, so basically I went about it as if I was just going to run a bunch of 5Ks. and he had to approach it and attack it as if I am never going to be able to get the durability and the miles that these people have. So I'm just going to figure out how to fuel my body to be able to continue running at that pace and just push the limits of fueling. And like literally went out the first time, made a spreadsheet of how he thought the race would go, finished within like 30 some odd seconds of what he anticipated and beat the record. There was like a 20, and I think they said the guy who had the record for 20 years, his like VO2 rating was 98 or something. And he's like, I'll never be able to beat this guy at what he's good at. So I just have to figure out how to do it on my own. And he like smashed the record.
So there's 3 races there. There's the marathon, the 50 mile, and the 100.
This is the 100.
He did the 100.
Yeah.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, fueling's a big part of it. So that was interesting. Last year I worked with a dietitian just because I'd never run that kind of distance before. I'm about 2 years into trail running. It's actually really relaxing. The thing that's, I think, very zen about trail running, because I actually don't consider myself a runner. I'm like 190, 6'2". I mean, I think all the guys that run are like, $150, $140, like 5'7". They're just, that's not really the point. I think it's more of a mental thing, and it ends up being this community that you're around. And before you know it, it's like, you're not running. The guys that I run with and train and bike with and swim with, like, they know everything there is to know about the podcast. Poor guys. They know way too much about the podcasting world, but building your difficult clients, your life, it becomes like your therapy group, because you're spending a lot of time with people. And it's actually, oddly enough, I think if you're not enjoying the process, the goal doesn't matter. And I think we pick a goal. That's the thing I learned the most about myself last year, actually, because when the 50 was done, it was like I had trained and I felt like this deflation. I was like, well, it's done. I think this would be analogous to like, you built your spec home. The spec home's done. It's sold. Like, now what? Like there's a kind of like you step off Mount Everest and you have like this come down moment. Plus I got injured and sick and whatnot. And I got a group of builders together. A lot of them, about 13 of them. Nick was there for one day. We did the 75 hard together as a group. And like it wasn't actually that physically demanding for me. It was more the mental discipline. And I learned a lot from it. And that's what's given me kind of the courage to do, the strength to make some bigger commitments, because of the mental discipline. Like, I think you practice your mental discipline. And so for me, I need the goal. It's like a ladder. Like, I actually don't care where the ladder goes on this. I just need like the next rung. I kind of need the next challenge. And, Tyler, you talk all the time about living in your 1 second window, paraphrasing, your moments on your dirt bikes, like where you're in the zone, like whether it's skiing or mountain biking for me or road biking. Like, I like to be, that's probably why I love downhill skiing. Cause like, you're going fast through the woods. Like, you don't have time to be thinking about anything else in life. Like, if you do, you're going to lose your teeth and end up in a hospital because you hit a tree. And so like, there's something really freeing about that. Anyway, I went way off the question.
It's interesting that you say that, though, because the book that I just referred to, essentially, like, it's not anything groundbreaking, and you read it. I'm actually, I just continue to keep reading it. But it's like, they're not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. And it seems very simple, but one of the biggest revelations for me was that like zone, or that 1 second window that you were saying. And that we often find we can only find that throughout certain aspects of our life, or through an extreme sport, or through an experience, when what you should be trying to do is train yourself to be able to live your life in that same flow or mental zone, by not having all the extra thinking in your life. Because if you think about, like you said, when you're downhill skiing, you don't think about anything. You're performing at your absolute peak, because your mind and your body are connected, and you're just doing what instinctually is right. You're not making any emotional decisions. And they say that like that, as humans, is when we are performing to our utmost ability. And I think it's true. And like the same goes for if you think a time in your life when you were the happiest, and there's not really anything else on your mind. It's like this flow state, and you're just able to take it all in and enjoy it. And you're not being distracted. You're not thinking about work, and trying to find a place in your life that you can get there more than just these activities. Is something that it's not going to be all the time, but like to make a conscious effort to get there, rather than just use quote unquote a distraction to make that happen for you, would be neat.
I think from a business standpoint and the life, I can't remember if I spoke about this last time on the podcast when I came on a year ago or whenever I was on, but a couple of years ago, you guys seen The Social Dilemma about like, yeah. And so after I saw that, it was so disturbing to me that I turned off every single notification on everything I own. So the only way you can get a hold of me, shockingly, on my phone is if you call me. Like my text doesn't ding, my email doesn't ding, no notifications. I turn it off every single time. I got an Apple iWatch for a short time because I thought I'd want the music or listen to a story when I was running. I hated the idea that it could interrupt me. And I talk a lot about it because I'm really passionate about it. And I'm sure I have undiagnosed ADHD. And so it's like, I'm easily distracted. Heck, I can distract myself. And so it's like, I don't need somebody else, begging for my attention. And so I've often, when I've interviewed architects, I often ask them like, when you're drawing, because I just feel like architects, have a more Zen state than builders do. It's like, do you like silence everything? Do you have like this perfect, whatever scenario, like you're drawing in this, and like you're blocking out time for quiet. And I feel like builders and business owners, like that we need to also do that. And one of the things, kind of speaking to what Nick was alluding to before about just, well, I didn't get to do it yet. My plan is to do it this Friday, is I have time blocks from last year. I'm going to cancel every single time block I have from the year forward and reset new ones just to try some different things. And we can talk later about what some of those might be. But I feel like that protection of quiet allows you to get to that flow state you were talking about, like your most important task. And I was reading, have you guys read Eat That Frog?
No.
And so Eat That Frog, essentially, it's a short book, but basically it's like, does eating a frog, unless you're in France, sound that appealing, or Louisiana? Probably not. And so the idea is like, every day I come in, I write down or every Monday, I write the 4 things I have to do that week. And then I make a bunch of lists of other things I need to do. Inevitably, I'm like anybody else, I do all the other things first. And I never do I'm trying to train myself. Like if I could do those 4 things and I did nothing else in the week, like that would be a successful week. So why do I start with all the easy stuff? It's easy to spat a few emails, to do a few
gratification.
Yes, it's the dopamine hit. It's the endless scroll, whatever. And so now I'm trying intentionally I'm not going to do a single thing till I do those 4 things. So Monday, I've now decided I don't take any meetings Monday, and I try to keep Tuesdays very open as well. Because if I can get those 4 things done, my primary tasks, then I'm going to try
4 things the easier things to do. Done.
It is interesting. Like going back to an example, you Tyler, I think you said, breaking up that race in 5, 5Ks. Mark, like you talk about how it's this community. Running was never about a community, and I think this is just something I've evolved into, is that I prefer not to be around people, and I prefer to be alone and quiet, and whether it's music or just nothing. And running was this thing I hate. Like I don't like running. I don't enjoy it. I never got into like the runner high, but I did it because it was hard, and I feel as though it's good to challenge myself. And that was how I would run. I would run and be like, all right, if I just make it to this mile, then I'll feel good. And then it was the next mile, and a half marathon was great. And it was always that second half. And it wasn't that I was physically depleted. It was that I was mentally depleted. Like I can't do this anymore. Like my brain hurts. I just can't, like, I'm not in a flow state. Every step is this like excruciating, like brain fog. And, to relate that, I used to ride 4-wheelers when I was a kid. And I remember, probably similar to downhill skiing, or it's actually similar to when I snowboard, you can't think about anything else. And I remember doing that and feeling like that sense of relief. And years ago, it was a stressful time in my business. And I remember I had crazy neck pain, and I knew like my shoulders were high. Like I'd walk around and I'm like, why are my shoulders up so high? It's like I was uptight, and I kept dropping my shoulders. And that year I went out and I bought a 1968 C10. And I bought literally I'll tell the story because it's actually funny. My wife went out with her girlfriends for dinner, and I sent her a picture of this C10 that was in Ohio. I'm like, what do you think? She goes, that's cool. I'm like, sick. And I messaged the guy. I'm like, can I pay it for it and have it shipped? and I had it shipped from Ohio. And I mean, it was a piece of crap. Like, it was a rust bucket. Like, I think it was like $5,000. And I remember picking it up, and I drove it. I fixed it. I got it to run, and I fixed it. And I was driving around. I came home, and my shoulders dropped, and I had like no neck pain. And I was like, holy shit, I forgot about this. Like, I forgot that when you have something that allows you to just like zone out and get into your quote unquote flow state, how good that feels. And that's what I think, Tyler, you and I were talking about yesterday. It's like, that is ultimately the goal. And thinking about time blocks, Mark, you and I have talked about that at the summit and things like that. I got real strategic with my time blocks. But what I have found over the last 6 months is that now my time block is just how early can I wake up? Because if I can wake up earlier, then literally no one bothers me, and I can get a shitload of work done.
What does your morning routine look like now? Because you used to go to the gym straight away. Has that changed? Are you working before that and then going to the gym and then going to work?
Yeah, I go to the gym 4 days a week. But I wake up at like 4:30, 4:45. So if I'm going to the gym, sometimes I just will hang out for a half hour and then go to the gym, because the gym opens at 5:30. Other times the one day I don't go to the gym, I just go right to the office. And it's like 4:30, 5 o'clock. I sit here, drink my coffee, and just get like a ton of work done. Right. And it's how I felt when I used to work on Saturdays, which I don't anymore. But when I come in on a Saturday, I'm like, man, I can get all my work done.
It's like free time.
Yeah, in 4 hours. And but the distractions, it's like I'm the same way. I can distract myself. And I get Slack open on on one screen, and I see a notification. I'm like, I can answer that.
Right.
And I shut notifications off. Email, all social media notifications have been off for years. But I said this to Tyler the other day. Tyler was like, hey, I'm going to really make an effort to stay off social media, except for like actually like, work, like, productivity. And I was like, yeah, it's been my release. Like, when I'm done and not doing anything, I'll just sit there and doom scroll for like after the kids go to bed, and I hate it. And it's like, but I keep doing it. And I was like, wait, I think I can set a limit on this. So now I have I just set 1 hour a day. And yesterday it was like, hey, you have 5 minutes left. And then it says you are done, and it X's me out. And it's like, do you want an extra minute? And I'm like, no. Like, I actually didn't want the 60 minutes, but here I am.
I think a lot of times our decisions are made from those distractions, or they're fear-based, or their emotional consideration to what we're going to do, how we're going to live our life, the decisions that we're making, rather than like intuitive or that flow state. And you think of elite athletes and like them doing what they do best. They are not sitting there thinking about what they're going to do. They're just doing it. It's all based on intuition. I think that so much of our lives now our decisions are not made intuitively. Like, we convince ourselves that we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that, or here's why we shouldn't do that, instead of just trusting our gut, making intuitive decisions, and then following through with them, which is what I was trying to tell you last night, Nick. It's like, you have so much noise going on, and if you just got rid of all the noise and got rid of all the distractions, and were not emotionally attached to moving forward in the direction that you had, you just looked at it very objectively, I think it makes it so much easier to get into that state where you're like, now I'm grinding, now I'm making progress, without all of those other distractions, whether they're external or internal.
Hey guys, real quick, we're going to take a quick break. Just remind you, moderncraftsman.co is our website. You get first release of new episodes. Make sure you join our mailing list. We're putting out emails almost daily at this point with some tips that we're working on in the background. Also, first access to new episodes and some behind the scenes content. And of course, if you're interested in any of our coursework or our free downloads, all of that's on the website, moderncraftsman.co.
Are there things that, mainly because I don't know what your routine is, Tyler, I know you've been running here the last little while. I'd be curious, Nick, like I find that if I don't work, like in a perfect world, if I didn't have a job, obviously I would, wake up early because I like that quiet time. I usually read the paper, read my Bible, read a book, read whatever. And then I always eat breakfast. I'm a huge eater. And then I'll if I had a perfect world, I'd love to email for like an hour or hour and a half. It'd be perfect before the kids get up. It'd be awesome to take the kids to school and then go work out. Then I'd love to work out at like 8:30 or 9, but in the reality of being a business owner, especially in construction, like that's just not obviously going to happen. So the opposite is like to you, like this morning I was up at 4:15 because I'm like, how early can I start pushing this? And the problem is like one of my kind of goals, I don't like word resolutions, but potato, it's the same thing.
Sure.
So like I've sort of set this goal of like being in bed at 9. Because if I go to bed at 9, I wake up at 5. That's 7 hours, with how you're tracking your sleep, with a loss of an hour roughly, depending on your wake up schedule and your REM sleeps. But I know that, sometimes I play tennis late at night, and it's funny how one day will sort of ripple into two. Like I actually canceled my tennis match the night before. I'm part of a league, and I did tweak my back doing squats. But point was like it was at 9 o'clock start. I wasn't gonna get home till midnight, and and even like this podcast, like I wanted to have energy, and I always have energy, but I was like I wanted to have like good energy, and it's like it's kind of disingenuous to our job, to other people. Like if you don't sleep, like we don't talk about sleep enough. And it's so important. It's like the only way to wake up earlier is to go to bed earlier. And so, I put my kids to bed at 8. My daughter can stay up till 8:30. We're very regimented that way. And I usually sauna and then I go to bed. And that's the only way I know how to do it, because otherwise I'll run out of gas. And I've even started, I don't know if you're like this, but I tend to like to do all my heavy work before noon, and then afternoons, I'd rather have, I get energy from people. So, interviews or podcasts or meetings or site meetings, that's easy to do in the afternoon. But I feel like if I do meetings, if I do all my site walks and meetings in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I don't really have the mental clarity or energy to like do those tasks. I'm kind of worthless. And so does that resonate with you at all? Are you better that way, or how do you structure your day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. Like, I'm the same. For the morning is where all my deep work is, but I'm not as structured as I'd like to be, in the sense that I do take meetings like mid morning, and then I'm taking meetings lunch, and then after it's in my calendar, it's blocked off. Like I have all my time blocks, but then it's really there just as like a goal. And then someone's like, "Can you meet at 7:30?" I'm like, "Yep."
I know, I do the same thing.
Plug it in. But I get up earlier and earlier. My kids just don't go to bed, and my wife's the complete opposite. She'd rather sleep till 9 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at 1. And then that spills into the kids. So I'm like trying to get him in bed, and she's like, "Why are you trying to rush him in bed?" I'm like, "Cause it's 8:30 at night and they're having ice cream."
Right.
and it's like we're about to be in a world of a bunch of crying kids in just 5 minutes here.
Right.
That's where like those feelings came from, like as I was feeling a lack of being present. And I always felt guilty about getting our kids to sleep early, because it's like, hey, my wife works, I work. By the time we get done, whether we're getting done sports, there's just no time with the kids. And I realized that there's plenty of time with them, whether it's a 5-minute car ride, a 10-minute car ride. I don't need to be distracted with a million other things. And I don't need to spend an extra hour and a half of my evenings allowing them to stay up or allowing to do things that they want to do, because I feel guilty that I didn't make time for them throughout the day. So that was a big driving force behind me. I'm not a huge, New Year's resolution type of person. I'd rather just make decisions and stick with them. But realizing over Christmas break that I just wanted to be more present in my life, and it somewhat led itself towards this. And I'm like, I don't need to pick my phone up every time I go somewhere. Like I don't need to bring it. I'm going to shower. There's no need to bring my phone up there. I'm going to the bathroom. I don't need to bring my phone. And I think that that's allowed me to feel as though I'm more connected and more present, even just driving to volleyball with my kid, where I'm not answering a million text messages. Like I'm just sitting there spending time with her. And it's been very very liberating and freeing. And honestly, from an anxiety perspective, I don't feel as though my stomach's in my throat all the time, which is probably, when somebody would text me and I'm like, I have to get back to them immediately or else I'm anxious. And I feel like I'm learning to cope with that and live with that and understand that, like, I don't have to text everyone back, whether they're my best friend or not. It can wait, and I can preserve some sanity and be more present with my family by doing so. Which, I mean, it's been a long time since I feel I've prioritized a lot of stuff over my phone, and over like my life.
I knew my cabinet guy, Rich Hip. He had his kids are older they're in college now. Mine are 8, 6, and 4. And he had a really interesting thing. They came home, they would put their phones in a wood bowl or in the back hall, and then they'd obviously have dinner together as a family, and then they were all allowed, I think, like a half hour or 45 minutes to check phones from like 7 to 8. But then all the phones had to stay on the main level, including the parents. And the phones had to be plugged in, and that's where they charged. They couldn't be in their bedrooms. They couldn't be, and then you couldn't get it till the next day. And the penalty, I think, is if they caught you, including the parents. I think Rich said one time he got up in the middle of the night and he went to check a text, and his daughter was going to get something to drink and busted her dad. But anyway, the point is like I think you lost your phone for like a week. And I just thought that was really cool. I haven't really got my wife on board with it because I would love the idea. I would love the idea to come home and like, hey, here's my phone. It goes in like a wood bowl.
Yeah.
We don't touch it, and there it stays. And anyway, I think, kind of back to that earlier quote I mentioned about boundaries create freedom. There's, you kind of mentioned you're finding a lot more freedom in being present with your kids, Tyler, because you're able to disassociate with the phone. I sort of like, I'm going to actually take a book. I'm going to take literally a page out of your book. I'm going to take the book and put it in the bathroom. Cause usually that's when that's pretty much the only time I, whatever, scroll.
Yeah.
So when I'm sending,
I mean, I just said that to Nick.
That's when I'm sending Nick all of his things that he has to like, oh great, here's a whole bunch from Mark. He must have.
I mean, I've become a much more efficient pooper these days because I'm like, all right, I read a few pages. I'm done pooping. I can go on with my day. And like when I'm on my phone, I'm like, oh, it like you said, it's that dopamine hit. I mean, I look at it also from a lifestyle perspective. And then like I look at my dad, and my dad's not like my dad, his phone is there as a tool for him to communicate to people, but he's not tied to it. He's not married to it. And obviously they're at a different point in their life. But if I spend time with my dad, he's not like checking Instagram and shit or like taking a picture that he can post it. And I don't know. I just think that there's something to be said for that. And it has created a lot of freedom and really helped quell a lot of my anxiety by just not feeling as though, did somebody text me? Did I miss something? Like trying to retrain your thought process to be like, it's going to be fine. Like I can just leave this here and I don't need it. Even at dinner, it's like when I'm at dinner and your phone's there, like I'll check it. If I don't have my phone, I'm not worried to get up from the table to go check my phone. It's out of sight, out of mind. And it's been nice. Like, man, I still use it for what I have to. And I still am like on there but I just feel like I'm more intentional with it and way more productive.
That was one of the Oh, go ahead, Nick.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to derail the conversation, so you might as well finish this.
I was just going to say, it's like for me, God, I just lost my train of thought. Go.
Well, I mean, honestly, this is what you're talking about right now essentially is what led me to create Bootcamp, which is coming up in May, and Sonacamp, because every year I go with a couple of my cousins, go up to the Boundary Waters, which is in northern Minnesota. And for 3 days, there's no phones. You're in the woods, you're canoeing, you're hiking, you're camping, and you're living essentially as basic as you can. Campfire, cooking your meals. And it's like, I look forward to it every year because it's complete detachment from we have a phone for an emergency, but I've kind of made it an unofficial rule that if anyone has a phone that rings, like you're not invited next year. Like I'm serious. Like this is pretty sacred time to just like connect, and we don't do anything. You go fishing, you sit around a campfire, you talk about life, but it's like you talk about your shoulders relaxing. And I, we talked about athletics, I do the same thing for hiking or camping or mountaineering or whatever. And so it was really with that in mind. I was like, and it came at the Second Contractor Coalition out at Huntington Beach. We got out there a day early, and Nick, you, Brad, and I went surfing with Patterson And it was just a blast, just being in the surf, just playing and that was one of my highlights of all the contractor coalitions. It had nothing to do with all the great stuff you learn. I'm not taking any value away from that, but one of the highlights was just being with other like-minded people, being outside, playing like little seals, and we all sucked at doing nothing. But it was doing nothing. It was great. It was like being a child. And then that next morning, Caleb McDonald from Toronto, Canada, he was there, and it was 5:30 in the morning, and we went out running. I said, "Hey, do you want to go run?" He's like, "Hey, I'll meet you in the lobby." And it was like 40 miles. I've told this story many times because it's so visceral. Every time the wind picks up, I think of him. And anyway, the wind was blowing off the beach so bad that it was like hitting. It like hurt. It was kind of stupid to be running, frankly. But it reminded me of like Lieutenant Dan in the storm of like Forrest Gump. He's like, "You call this a storm?" And it was like and he's Caleb's really fast runner, way faster than me. And so we're like leaning into the surf. The wind is like blinding us, and like we today still talk about it. Probably every couple of months we'll send a text. We're like, "Hey," and like that's what led for me to even want to do this, because I'm like, this stereotype of builders being fat, lazy, hairy, flannel wearing alcoholics is I mean, sure, are there some out there? Yeah, maybe, but like honestly, at the contractor coalitions, you got people in the, Nick's walking back from Equinox with his iced coffee, having, bench pressed, bench pressed a car, Caleb and I are out running, but like everyone was being active. Brad's a big, athlete as well. And so it's like, wait a minute, why aren't we talking about this? And so I went one step further. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a 3-day boot camp to Zion National Park. I wanted to pick kind of something domestic that people could get to easily. You get off the airplane. I'm going to check in your phone. We're going to have one emergency phone for if anyone's wife or anyone else needs to get a hold of them for a family emergency. And you're off the grid for 3 days. We're going to be hiking, canyoneering, mountain biking, but just being together. And it's a very small setting, like 20 people is the max. And it's just going to be small, intimate gathering to just do nothing but play in the woods, play in the canyons. And like, I hope people see that there's going to be value in that. My wife is like, "Are you just going on a vacation with a bunch of people you like?" I'm like, "It's more than that, honey."
Yeah.
But anyway, that's why I did that. And we'll see what happens.
So I remember what I was going to say. The phone is like, for me, and this is the issue, is that when it rings or there's a notification or there's an email, it's opportunity, and I'm chasing opportunity. And every opportunity that comes in, it's like this internal goal of mine. Like I that's mine. I'm going to win that. I'm going to pounce on it. I'm going to be the fastest. I'm going to get them what they want. And it's going to be the most rewarding. And when I don't have my phone, I'll intentionally leave it at home. Like if I'm with Meg and the kids, I'll just leave it at home. And and then we'll be somewhere. And then she's like, "I'm going to go over here." And I'm like, "I don't have my phone." She goes, "Why don't you have your phone?" I'm like, "Well, I don't want it." She goes, "How am I going to get in touch with you?" I'm like, "I don't know now." But it's those times, or when we go up to New Hampshire to our cabin, it's like, if I can physically put my phone somewhere and just be like, I'm not going to touch it. That's when I shoulders drop. I feel great. I'm playing outside with my kids. I'm doing nothing. And, we were up there a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, and we were leaving, and I don't know, I turned around and I said like bye to the cabin. I was like, "Bye life I really like wish I lived," or something like that. And she goes, "What?" And she goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like when I come here, I feel like we could just live here." She goes, "Nick, it's a 600 square foot cabin. There's 9 of us with animals." I'm like, "I know, but like there's something about that I love. Like it's just like we have just what we need. We go to the store and get groceries, and it's just such a simple life.
It slows down life, and we need things in our life to slow us down, and
I do nothing else. Yeah, and that's
funny,
like,
Nick, because like that, this is what we were talking about earlier, and like what I think you're trying to do, Mark. That like the problem isn't your phone ringing or dinging; it's your reaction to that. And like if you were able to train your mind that it's like, all right, I'm going to create a system for intake or how I handle these phone calls or where they go when I'm away, that's far more productive than like you're reacting to the phone ringing. And that's what's generating all of this anxiety or excitement or emotion behind it. It's not the phone dinging that's the problem. Like it ends up being you that's the problem, and a lack of being able to disconnect from that. And I think that what Mark's doing, and like it's crazy to me that we have to think that we must convince people that there's value there.
Amen. That is honestly, that is the biggest slog. I mean, it translates to, the Contractor Coalition and Sonic Camp, all these things. It's like, the book I'm reading right now is called Relentless. And, he's like, I'm not going to tell you that he trained Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and a bunch of other people. But his point he's like, what I'm telling you is actually I'm going to push you really hard. But he's like, there's no secret sauce here.
Yeah.
It's mental discipline, and it's doing things that make you uncomfortable.
That's a great book.
It is really good. It's really inspiring. Yeah. But I guess going back to what, Tyler's kind of alluding to is like, being present in the moment means sort of like being present in the moment. And I think any parent, especially dads, we like how, we're busy, like I know in some ways I like the commute. It takes me about a half hour, 45 minutes home. It allows me a little bit of decompression, but frankly, I'm working in the car the whole way. So I don't even call that decompression, because I'm like doing whatever I can. You roll in the door and like you come in, it's dinner time, all that stuff. Like how can you, and then, you're sitting at the dinner table with a 5,000 foot stare thinking about, whatever's happening, not all the time, but sometimes. And of course my wife will be like, excuse me, we're having dinner. Are you here? And like, everyone can relate to that, because we've all done it. And how do we be present right in the moment? Like I admire the fact that what you said, Tyler, like, going to your kids, like, going to like my daughter May, like going to her, watching her play tennis on a Saturday after I had taken 2 weeks off. I had nothing to look at. So I just got to watch her play tennis. It was so enjoyable. And it's like, but yet, in the months to come, like, am I going to be able to have the self-discipline to either just not bring the phone in or just like leave it? There's always the intention that you're not, but it becomes a habit, and it becomes this thing that becomes very difficult to break the cycle on. And so,
well, I mean, that's what I was saying about social media. It's like, it wasn't even, I would have my phone in my hand and I would subconsciously open and swipe and then open Instagram. And it was
you
like,
ever switch your apps around on your phone?
Yes,
and then you go to do that and you're like, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, I moved them a couple months ago because I was like, I'm doing it, not even realizing I'm doing it. And that's when literally 2 days ago, I set limits on it. I'm like, I'm just going to set limits. All social channels, Nick, you have an hour to do all your social stuff. And even now, like, even today, it's like when I'm in there, I'm like, oh, wait, I only have an hour. I don't want to waste it. And it's like, waste it for what? Like it's I can always open it, but now I'm like thinking about like, all right, when I'm on here, I'm going to be intentional with it. And like, I'm going to go answer my DMs. I'm going to make sure that post is good. I'm going to engage on a post I just did, and then I'm out. I think, and it's like that, like those things of like, it would be the same thing where it's like leaving your phone in the car. It's like, it's almost like I want my phone to be dead. Like just kill my phone. Like make it 1%. Yeah, I can't bring it in. Like it's got to charge.
Do you guys know what a Faraday cage is?
A what?
A Faraday cage. So it's basically like some metal. Like you ever been to a building with like lots of lath and plaster?
Oh yeah, it kills your.
Yeah,
I have seen that. Yeah,
I don't know if time. I don't know if I'll have enough time. I don't know if I'll have enough time to talk on this episode about this project I'm working on called the Misa Hoos, but I'm really trying to promote intentionality in the story of the philosophy of why I'm building the house and the choices I'm making. But one thing that I haven't looked into yet, I was going to ask you the question, is like, it'd be really cool, and not just shut off Wi-Fi, but it'd be really cool with like if you could have a, they call it technology free zone, whatever that actually, I mean, I understand the concept, but like, what would the actuality of it be? Could I push a button in my phone or in my house where my house would essentially be like, it's a cabin in New Hampshire, like you can't reach it. And I mean, Johnny used to put Wi-Fi switches in the homes he built, so they would kill the router every night. Like it was like something that they would just shut down the Wi-Fi. And we worked with a couple clients, not so much for like killing the actual ability to reach, but they were hypersensitive to EMF. So like Romex emits EMF, so all the Romex had to be replaced, and they wanted everything in the metal shielded Romex. Oh wow!
What is
like
it called?
Commercial conduits.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. BX cable, because it doesn't emit EMF, and that was only for the line voltage, and all the lighting was like, we want all low voltage lighting. And it's, you start like, it's all those like 5G, like now you hear all this stuff about 5G. It's like, this is stuff that you don't see, but it's like but it does. I mean, whether you believe it or not, it's like it's obviously doing something. You know, I saw something yesterday, and it was like, this is how Wi-Fi spreads in a house from the router, and it was showing how it like bounces off walls and stuff. And it just is like it almost looks like this infrared map. But looking at it, I'm like, it was like, I don't know why. That's frightening looking. But like, why is it frightening? It's like because of the color of it. I'm like, yeah, probably.
I mean, we don't know what the long-term effects are because they haven't been around long enough, right?
Right. But it's like showing it. It just, I don't know.
I think it'd be interesting, even with what you're doing, Mark, with these boot camps. And it might be difficult to implement, but like, to me, the value is to be able to teach them how to bring a slice of what you're doing into their everyday life. Because at the end of the day, and when you look at like into Buddhist principles and everything else, like, it's not about absolving yourself of the distractions or positioning yourself in a place that there are no distractions, right? I'm going to get in a boat in the middle of the lake. At some point, those distractions are going to find you. It's being able to live or get yourself to that place or that mindset while all of these distractions are present. And I think that that's the big game changer. It's not like, putting my phone away is not actually making me a better human. It's just out of sight, out of mind. Like, can I actually work on behavioral techniques to be able to handle this distraction and just not be bothered by it? And I think that like teaching those type of things and understanding the thought process and the reactions that we have as humans could be super beneficial, because it's a shame that we have to go to New Hampshire, Nick, or you have to go to Zion and you have to put your phone in a fucking bin to be able to get there.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Is there something that we can be doing to prevent some, or to promote some of that respite in our lives? And that's something that I'm trying to work towards, because I can't get rid of all the distractions.
I mean, I think it's a really well said. I'll have to think about that a little bit more about what that would look like. I think where this originally was born was more of the athletic side and the healthy lifestyle. You guys have talked in the past a lot about, no alcohol, sleeping, those kinds of things. So this was, I didn't really, the phone just was kind of a last minute ad, which oddly enough might be the hardest thing for people to give up. But,
yeah,
it was more about, it'll be 2-a-day workouts. And what I've said on the website, if people are interested, they can go to the, curiousbuilder.com and check it out under events. But the point of it is it's not about who can run a fast mile. I don't care if you run a 5-minute mile or a 400, not 400, 20-minute mile. It doesn't really matter. You can walk it. The point is like, trying hard and learning new things. And then ultimately being around a community of other owners that are interested in wellness. And the sauna camp was something totally different. Like, so that's just a couple weeks here in Minnesota. I'm not sure when this episode's airing, but on the 24th of January, it's a half-day deal where I interviewed this lady named Mel Krug. She was a former rugby player turned chiropractor turned holistic medicine. She teaches somatic breath work. I don't know much about it, but for the first hour, we're actually laying down on the floor of this lodge, and you cover your eyes, and she basically works through breathing patterns, because you'll be able to take that and combat stress. I assume it's some sort of meditative principles similar probably to yoga breathing, box breathing, because you're basically trying to control your stress and reactions through your breathing. And then you're using that to go down to the cold water. I'm sure Wim Hof, who's made it, celebrated kind of breathing techniques to elevate his heart rate in cold water. But I assume some of those principles will be the same. We'll go into the cold water, go into the sauna, go into the cold water. It's also very relaxing. A lot of people think like, oh, I couldn't do that. It's actually really, it's like, does anyone stress about going to get a massage? I certainly hope not. It sounds really relaxing and great. Honestly, that's what sauna, the heat just kind of relaxes you. And then the cold, you actually have to breathe through it. And then at the end of it, we're doing this really cool wood fire Mediterranean meal. And you're going to be so hungry from being, in the sauna so long that it sounds like the meal is the highlight of the whole thing. And so, but the whole point was just to get people together in kind of a fun, easy way to do something different, to celebrate. Wellness is a big, broad term, but it's like, I heard that it was in the book Relentless. And the guy was like, you can live your life and suffer and because you're out of shape and you did nothing to do it, and you're still going to suffer because you're out of shape. Or you can suffer to get in shape, but you'll be in shape. Like you're going to suffer, like choose your heart.
Choose your heart. Yeah.
Choose your suffer. Do you want to suffer being healthy or suffer being unhealthy? You're going to suffer, pick it. And I think that really resonated with me because I honestly don't know why I like to do hard things. I love that book, Do Hard Things, but I can't tell you why. I don't really know. I need a psychologist.
If you complete a hard thing, is that enough for you, or do you need to then tackle something harder?
Well, based on my goal this year, evidently the latter. I both. I think I enjoy the process. I think I enjoy suffering. And if it sounds weird, but I think it's, and Nick talks about all the time. Obviously, he's a masochistic for sure. But I think it's I'm comfortable being uncomfortable, and I think pain sort of brings clarity. And pain is a loose word. Like I'm not like suffering at an extreme level here, people, but like I think by suffering a little bit, like doing something that's hard, you get a sense of obviously the runner's high, the euphoria, the heart rate, the all those things are real, but I think like a sense of accomplishment. And I think, I don't need validation of someone saying, hey, you did a great job. Like I'm doing it for myself, but that doesn't mean that like doesn't mean it doesn't feel good to be congratulated. It's kind of like this, like if you're doing it to be congratulated, or if you're doing it for other people, like if it's extrinsically motivated, you won't make it. It won't last. And if it does, it's very short. But if you're driven from the inside, if it's intrinsic, like there's no limit to what you can do. And I love sort of testing to see what you can and can't do. I have a friend of mine. I'm not sure I'm prepared for this. I'm comfortable with death, but there's a calendar. So I just bought Jesse Itzler's The Big Ass Calendar, that plans out your whole year. And I've been playing around with it and it's kind of fun, but he actually has a lifetime week calendar. Have you ever seen one of these things?
No.
Yeah.
It's kind of
each week.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's kind of morbid because it's like a time glass of your life. Yeah. And I'm 44, and let's just say I lived to 80 or 40, that means I have less than half of my life left. And like it's like a visual representation like of how many weeks you have left of your life. And to Nick's initial reaction, that was kind of mine. I'm like, I'm okay with like, I know I'm going to die, and like that's a separate spiritual conversation, but like I don't think I need to look at that every day and be reminded of my mortality to the degree that like it needs to.
I'm doing shit because I'm scared.
Yeah, like I don't think that's healthy. Now I think how you view it, maybe for some people that's helpful. Yeah. My buddy Tony, who's into that, he's like, I want to do as many things as I can and challenge myself as much as I can, and time is ticking. And he's just like, I'm methodical. That's fine if he has a healthy relationship with.
I think that's the idea is like, and then it becomes like rows, right? Like you check off a row. It's like I'm moving down a row, right? Meaning I'm getting closer. And it's like, I can only imagine like now you're like 70, 80 years old, and it's like filling in the next one. It's like, man, I only got a couple weeks left.
Well, my grandma turns 98 tomorrow, and I'm going to go up and see her maybe this weekend or next.
Don't get her that calendar.
No, I'm not. There's no point.
You get her a much shorter one.
No, I'm just going to ask her. Like, I'm just sort of interested. Like, I think I'm somebody who likes talking about this because I guess I appreciate, like, I actually enjoy funerals in the sense that, like, I think understanding our mortality is important. Like, understanding, like, I think it helps us appreciate life. I think it helps us bring us back to the present. Like when you're at a funeral, it helps you be thankful for the little things you have. You shoot and you go home and hug your kids, or you bring your kids with you. Like, one thing that people, I always try to bring my kids to funerals because like there's no tonic better than a small child asking their innocent questions. And
we don't even know the people. We just bring our kids to random funerals.
You're like what's his name from Wedding Crashers? We're crashing funerals. Like Tyler and his family.
Turn around, there's a funeral.
Yeah. But I guess my point is life is short, and how are we living it? And nobody's perfect.
How do you personally come to terms with mortality? Is it spiritually? Or
you're talking about me specifically?
Yeah. Or is like, do you have any sort of objective tools that you use for accepting mortality? Like, can you wrap your head around that from a non-spiritual perspective?
I couldn't answer that non-spiritually. I wouldn't know even how. For me, I can only speak for myself. My dad and I have a very close relationship. We talk about death a lot, but and not in a negative way, but just like a positive way. And yeah, I can't untie my spirituality, of like what heaven would be like, or I'm a Christian, so like what relationship with Jesus and God is like, and like, but like I wouldn't want to walk through life with fear. And I think it's not that we don't have fear and we don't fear things, but it's like I don't think we're supposed to walk this life just burdened with this heavy load of fear all the time. And like, I think for me, it's like, you know, this is the spiritual side of it, you know, reading and praying and trying to be a good person, trying to love. I guess love would be the centerpiece. Like, if I feel like I love people, if I love my family, if I love other people, if I can be generous of spirit, if I can try to get better at the things I'm not good at, and let's just call it love, because like I fail like anybody else. And it's like, if I can prioritize those things and I can have peace that if my time is today, or if my time is next week or 5, of course we'd all like to live a long life, but we don't get to make those choices. And so it's like, just to be kind of at peace. And sometimes you're at peace and sometimes you're not at peace. And if you're not at peace, like, this is speaking for myself in the third person, like, I need to find peace. That conversation I was having last night with my buddy Seth, you know, for an hour and a half, that's what led to that straight arrow comment. Because he was talking about, like, you know, he felt very restless. He's like, I have been kind of doing the same thing for decades, but I don't feel like I'm any closer to God. I don't feel, and he said, and then he brought up that analogy, because I said, you know, maybe you're right where you're supposed to be, and you just need to find peace. And I feel it's hard to know what that means. I think for every person, they have to sort of reflect on what that means. But to me, it's finding peace. And if you're not at peace, find a way to get there. And if you are at peace, it's like this very elusive thing. Like, I'm trying to, if you try to explaining this stuff to children, actually is probably the thing that helps the most. Because when you explain it to your children, you realize how bad of a grasp you have it on personally. Like, you know, the other day, my kids right now, my 4-year-old is struggling with or my 6-year-old is struggling with time infinity. And he's like, I don't get infinity. Like, how can time? And it's like, buddy, I remember being a little kid and that thought and it was like a worm in my brain for like a number of years. I couldn't contemplate like what eternity was. And some people believe that, some people don't. So I know it's hard. There's a lot of these things I'm like, sorry guys, your dad doesn't know the answer. This is what I believe, and this is I'm doing the best to try to figure it out. But, you know, let's find peace, let's find love, let's find joy. And I don't know, I butchered the question that you answered.
No, but it that perspective is the like children's perspective is interesting. One, I think that I think that a lot of people fall on religion because they are afraid of mortality. Yeah. And a lot of people hang on to that, especially as they get older, because that's what gets them through. And I don't know if that's the right answer. And I think that it would be helpful for a lot of people to be able to like wrap their head around in an objective manner, just being able to handle that. But I think that like the science of it that's something that as humans, generationally speaking, we have trouble doing, and that we're getting further from being able to accept that, or, you know, celebrate that like they did in the past. But then your reference to children, like, I often feel that children are the closest thing we get to peace. Like, other than a colicky baby, like kids who come out of the womb are generally happy. They haven't been tarnished or sullied with experience or somebody brainwashing them that they can't do this or they can't do that. Like, they'll try anything and they'll do anything and they'll be happy because they don't know any better. And I think that like reflecting on that and trying to get to that point would also be helpful for us.
I mean, there's a sense of joy there, right? I mean, kids are incredible empaths, right? Like, kids feel emotions. Like, you ever walked into from a hard day at work and like your kids take one look at you and they're like, Dad, what's wrong? Like, the kids are incredible. I mean, I think kids are the biggest, you know, that's why if any sort of hypocrisy in your life, you know, saying one thing and doing another, like a kid will be the first thing that sniffs it out, because like you cannot lie to children, you know, besides Santa Claus and those other things. But anyway, the point was you shouldn't do that anyway. But anyway, my point is they're amazing at seeing right through all of it. And I'm always amazed at the innocence of a child and their ability to grasp that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that that's another thing that's nice about just trying to be more present with your kids and not lose sight of that. And I was laying in bed last night with them reading, and I feel like for so long you try in life, whether it's try and make more money, try and be successful, try and be a better father. And half the time it's just like, if you stop trying so hard, it would probably be easier. That sometimes we create more chaos and more harm than actually good.
Well, I think it's like, why do the kids, we just had Christmas, right? And like, we didn't have any big cardboard boxes, but when we moved into our house, a couple of years ago, when we remodeled it, the big refrigerator box, like we made that into a spaceship, and like they care. I mean, honestly, kids just want to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Spend time with you and spend time with you. Like, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And so like, one of the things that I need to do a better job of, because I like all these outdoor things, is like taking, like, I laid out my schedule for the year. I don't think I was sending it to someone else. I was sending it to Brad and Weaver on the Hard 75 group, just about planning out races and stuff like that. But the reason I bring it up is my wife said, you have to choose between the Guys Ski Trip and IBS. I was like, ooh, that's a tough one, because like I have to go to IBS because I feel like now with the Curious Builder and the things that we're doing, I need to be there I just need to be there. And I have so many friends now across the country. It's a great place to just catch up with them. But the Guys Ski Trip is a little bit like, it's this very special time. But anyway, I negotiated. I said, how about if I do a daughter daddy ski trip? So I'm going to take my daughter May, and we're going to go out west. 'Cause I feel like one of my big goals or resolutions or whatever we want to call it is like, I get so much energy from being in the mountains, being in nature. And so I kind of feel like from here on out, I need to be in the mountains once a quarter. That could be obviously with family. That could be, a running trip. That could be skiing. It could be just, my sister lives in Colorado, so just going to see my sister. So like, I think, and the reason I feel that way is like, I have a lot of childhood memories from that, but I just feel like I can get my kids on a simple hike, that doesn't have to be some grand gesture. I think even going back to the book of the hospitality, Nick, remember like, when they bought the sled and the hat for that couple from, a warm climate and sent them out to Central Park to go, that cost them $100 for a memory that they'll never, ever. I mean, I've told the story about 500 times at this point.
Yeah.
So it's like, the point is, I think these special moments, and I think, how it relates to building and not only our life, but like, what are special moments that we can deliver to our homeowners, like never losing sight. And I think most builders do a good job with this, actually, is that, we're building people's homes for all these memories to happen. And like, I think we should take more credit and more self-satisfaction with realizing like, you built a home, regardless of the strata. I don't care if it's a $10 million house or a $10,000 house. That's a playhouse at this point. It gets inflation's but like, there's a family there. They're making memories. They're having the same conversations and the same life things that we're talking about now. And I think I'd like to talk about more about that as a community, and celebrating the men and women that make that happen. And I know you guys do a great job of celebrating that as well, but it's worth celebrating because it is a special thing.
Do you feel that you're doing everything that you want to in your life right now?
Well, that's a pretty big question. Thanks for tuning in to Modern Craftsman. We'll catch you next time for this answer.
If you didn't need to provide and you didn't need to make money, would you be doing what you're doing now, or would you be doing something else?
That's a really good question. I couldn't have answered the first question. I can answer that. Yes, I would be doing exactly what I'm doing. I don't know if that answers the first, but I'm I mean, there's always more that you could do. If money wasn't an issue, I would love to go running in the Dolomites, or I'd love to go to Japan with my family right now, because I'm just obsessed with Japan. So I would travel more with a family, and we travel. We just got back from Mexico, so no one's feeling sorry for us. But like, the point is, like, if financial and responsibilities of work were not an option, sure, there'd be lots of other things I would do. But within a balanced life of normal people, like, no, I'm very happy. We make time for, I one of the goals that I have is probably more interpersonal with my wife. My wife's an extreme introvert. I'm an extreme extrovert. And so one of the things that I bought a pizza oven recently, and one of the things that I want to do is cook outdoor pizzas and just invite anyone that wants to come over. And I'm hoping that my wife will be more like, it's not that she likes people. She just likes people in a one-on-one setting and like a deep conversation.
Does she like pizza?
She does like pizza, but my kids love pizza. But my point is like, could I have like a standing? I do kind of like a rhythm, or I do like sort of a structure I could follow. So if I could say, hey, one Saturday a month. So if I could cook 12 times next year, and people could come over, my neighbors could come over, my cousins could come over, whoever wants to come over, bring your ingredients. I'll make the pizzas. We'll break bread. We'll have a meal in our backyard, and that would be really cool. Like I crave community. I mean, on top of all the things.
What's preventing you from doing that right now?
My wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think just the idea that like planning stuff is sort of, she likes, she's a hospitalist. She works at the hospital. And so like her life is dictated to the nth degree when she's there. So when she's not there, she wants absolute freedom. Whereas entrepreneurs, we're the opposite. We have to create structure because we have none. And so therefore most of us need a structure to create homes and follow a plan. And so I think you have these two opposing, philosophical approaches. And so and we've talked about it. I mean, I think I'm willing to compromise. So we've talked about this recently, and she actually just got a new job and she's really excited about it. That is a lot more regular, which allows her maybe more freedom and less stress. And so I think everyone has to sort of meet, like, I'm a better person for sure because of my spouse. And like a lot of these boundaries create freedom. Like I think like the fact that I'm home every day, we talked about this last time, but the fact that I try to get home every day at 5 because we have dinner every day at 5:30, like that structure, like, while it's important to me, I believe it. I probably couldn't do it to the level that I do without my wife being really the main driver behind it. And so there's a lot of benefits too. So it's kind of like any family, how do you figure out, what's best for your kids, best for you, best for each other? And it's a work.
And this is probably personal, but what's the conversation like when you are traveling or you're going on these trips with friends that's so foreign to your wife and leaving your family? Like, does she have?
She comes with.
Does she?
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say all of them.
She just stays in the hotel.
No, she runs. She does them with me. So like the one we did a year and a half ago. Well, for one thing, this last year, every race I did was in Minnesota, so it was not really a big deal. I'd be gone for maybe one night. The one we did in Montana, we did a 50K together out where we used to have a cabin out by Whitefish, Montana for 20 years as a kid. And so I always wanted to bring my kids back. I really wanted to go by train, but my wife was like, we are not going 24 hours in a train. Let's just fly out there in 3 hours. And so we went out there, we ran it together. It was amazing a weekend. So like, no, I always invite her. Like, I want her to come. Like when I go, I'm going to do the Leadville Marathon, not the full, because the 100 milers in August, the training sequence didn't work out. Like she does lots of marathons. So I'm like, why don't you do the marathon with me? Like I'm trying to get her to come. So I would say she probably comes 25-30% of the time. And I think to answer your question, it's like, I ask her, like, I'll always invite her. Do you want to come? Like, I don't feel like I need the, and I try to get her to do stuff. I think, a lot of times I've heard a lot of husbands and wives, they say, well, hey, I'll do a guy's weekend, you do a girl's weekend. The thing is my wife doesn't really like that. She's like Nick, she wants to be a solo runner. So when she trains and she runs, like that's her alone time. That's her recharge time. Like she's by herself. And so the idea, I mean, she'll do stuff with her immediate family and us as well. But I think everyone recharges differently. I've learned a lot on how to recharge myself because I've actually started to value, shockingly, when I was injured here recently, I was doing single leg box jumps and I missed the edge of the box and landed on my patella and on my knee, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't run for like a month, so I had to walk every morning. But I would always listen to the podcast and whatever, and finally I got rid of it, and I just sort of enjoyed for the first time in my life just like silence, and that's really hard for me. And so that was it's still something I'm continuing to work on. Like, it's hard for me to do yoga because my mind, like, even I know yoga is good and like I enjoy the other things is just low on the list of priorities. But like when I do it, I can see why it is so good. Like Morgan Mahler does yoga a ton, and she does a lot of journal writing. I think her and I have similar minds, in fact, that they never stop and they're on overdrive. And so I applaud her for sort of putting in those things that sort of help her, decompress her brain.
That's the same thing like that I struggle with most in life. And I've just realized, that it's the Indian and not the arrow, where, I sit down to read and the distractions aren't coming in the form of my kids running in or screaming or their dogs asking to go out. It's my own mind. Like I read and I see a word that cues up a thought that brings me somewhere else. And before you know it, I've just read the same sentence 10 times over, and I don't even realize it. I'm so distracted. And I've realized that like that's the type of work that I need to do within myself to be more present. It like the distractions are always there, but if I set myself up to read a book and I'm laying in bed and I can't focus, there's a problem there. And it seems that the yoga, the breath work, the running, the dirt bike is the only place that I can get to those areas in my life, and it's basically because it's forced and I have no other choice to. There has to be more balance there, like you said, and I have to be able to get to a place in my life where regardless of where I am, I can find some sort of peace. Like I should be able to sit in bed at night and read a book and not have to reread things over and over and over again because my mind's just going in 10,000 directions, and I have to sit there and tell myself, don't think about that. Go back to this. Focus on this.
Can I ask you a question? Do you when you run, do you work out in the morning or in the evening?
Usually it works out better to do it like once everyone else has settled down at the end of the day.
Oh, so do you find that your heart rate then spins up? So your mind is racing because your heart rate is elevated? What I'm trying to get at is like your sleeping habits, because, and like, if your mind is racing, like, I don't know, Nick, we can talk to you too, but like, I'd just be curious, like your bedtime routine, because a big part of it is like, when you get in, if you're reading a book or how you decompress. I know some people that they can exercise and go straight to bed. I mean, one of the reasons why, for instance, I sauna a lot at night is that heat. Anytime your body goes from a high temperature to a low temperature, I think it's like a 3 to 4 degree drop in a short period of time. It triggers things, in your nervous system to basically, it puts you out. And so a lot of times we give our kids baths at night, not for that reason, but I'm like, oh great, they're a hot bath, and then they get into bed, they cool down, like they go to sleep. I'm just curious, like,
for me, it's not like it wouldn't matter regardless. I'm not, it's more of a fluid exercise schedule. And I think that like, if I become rigid with it, it creates anxiety for me, right? Where I'm like, I need to run before the podcast, and then my day's shot, because if I can't make it happen, or if there's something else that I need to do, it just creates anxiety for me. So I try and do it as much as possible, and it's kind of get in where you fit in. I think it's just my brain like this, and coming to terms with the fact that this has been my brain my entire life. And one of the reasons why I stopped drinking and why I wanted to be healthier. And I'm realizing that like all of these things are probably substitutions for doing the mental and emotional work behind it, and are serving somewhat as distractions, as with everything else that has been in my life for however so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I like that. I think I appreciate that you realize that about yourself, because my wife in particular, like if she doesn't get her workout in, she's anxious. I know when we were doing this, this silly 75 hard thing, you had to do 2 45-minute workouts, but they had to be broken, and one had to be outside, one inside. Well, what happened is I would do my outside workout every morning, go running or walking or whatever, or biking when it was nice out. And then I'd work all day. I'd get home, but usually the time that I'm most relaxed is I like to play, probably not a shock, but I love playing with the kids. I like playing games, Monopoly, Clue, like I'll play all the games, Legos. I don't care. I just like playing games, and then I'll put them to sleep, and then I'd like to sauna and go to sleep. But the problem was I had to do another workout.
Yeah.
And I found that what happened was I was getting, and luckily it was only a 75-day window, so it was a short period of time, but my wife was not impressed. She's like, I've lost a lot of respect for you. You're prioritizing your health over your children. And then she like stormed out. I was like, oh, okay, a little dramatic, but we had a nice little chin wag about that later. But the point of it was that she was not right, not wrong, because that's an old time saying there for you. But when I'm reading a book, I would like you, Tyler, I'd like to read a book or two and like, okay, guys, but I was so in my mind, I'm like, I'm tired. I still have to work out. Like, how quick can I, like, what's the shortest book? Like, no, one book, because I have 2 boys and 1 girl, and I'd read the boys. They each get to pick a book or 2 books or whatever. And it's like, Simon is learning how to read. And of course you can imagine my patience when I'm like in the back, the clock is ticking, and I'm like, see spot run. And I'm like, I need to run. And so anyway, that's not fair to Simon. And so that was just I wouldn't do that long term. That was a short term goal. And I learned a lot from it. I mean, I even learned this from it. But I appreciate the fact that you realize that sometimes people, you put these things to do, but then it creates anxiety, and that ensuing anxiety doesn't do you any good. I think that's why in general, the older you get, more and more people I know have to work out early, because it's like you get that done and then you don't have to worry about that anxiety. Would you agree with that, Nick?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely someone that has to work out in the morning. It doesn't work for our family schedule, number one. But secondly, it's like I couldn't work out and then go to bed. I mean, I could, but it just, I don't think I would decompress as much. But where working out like that pumps me up and gets my energy going. But it's funny, like I do have a sense of anxiety when I don't get to work out. Like when we're up in New Hampshire, there's no gym there. So I bought some dumbbells, and I'm like, all right, I got to get out there and go work out. But I'm also not going to do it at 5 a.m. because the house is small and I'm going to wake someone up. So then I'm trying to fit it in during the day. I'm just in my head about it. But it's even more so like I get there and I'm at this point, I'm there early. So it's like I'm sitting there and they open at 5:30 and they let everyone start walking upstairs at 5:28. And if I get there and I'm parking and it's 5:28, I'm like, fuck, I'm late. And for like, and I don't, and I say it, I say it out loud, and I'm like, but why? Like, why does that matter?
Yeah.
And I say it all the time. I'm like, it's not a race. No one's like, next late. Like no one's keeping track. It's like,
all that shit's in your head.
It's all in my head. And it's this like, it's the same thing. Then I look at my clock when I'm done working out. I'm like, all right, 6:30, I can shower. I can be at my office at 7 because I like to like start my day at 7. And then if I get here at 7:05, I'm like, all right, well, I'm 5 minutes behind schedule. And I'm like, what schedule? Like the thing I have scheduled is deep work. And it's like, just do deep work for 55 minutes instead of an hour.
Speaking of deep work, one of the things Caleb McDonald did that. Big shout out to him again. Once a month he lives in Toronto. He would take a train in town. He'd dress up a little bit differently. He said, go to a favorite coffee shop, and he worked for the day on the business. He wouldn't answer email. He would only work on the business. And I really appreciated that. And I will see how it goes. Part of my time blocking is, a lot of people catch up over the holidays, right? We say we're not working, but then we work. In this case, I was able to completely shut down and not do it at all. And so I guess my question for myself was like, that was really cathartic and felt really good. My goal is I'm going to take 1 week per quarter, and not other than like, let's say a podcast recording or like a standing ops meeting or a client meeting, I will have no additional meetings in that. So like I'll call it like a catch up week once a quarter. I've never tried it before. Because why do we wait till the end of the year to sort of clean house on all this stuff? If we did it more regularly, we wouldn't have that much to clean up at the end of the year anyway.
I mean, I think the trick is like even more regularly than that, because I don't know. I noticed for myself, it's like doing shit around the house where, I have all weekend to do it, and I could spend all year and you still don't get, like, it's almost just get done what you can get done and realize that you'll never get it all done. And I struggle with that with my oldest daughter. I'm like, this is going to make no sense to you now, but when you get older, it will, that you never get it all done. Like it's never, what have you done where it's like, all right, I'm actually done with it. I'm going to close the book on this and put it, like, it's never, ever done and never exactly how you want it to be. And there's a certain aspect of like, you have to be okay with that. Because I just don't, like I said, it's like laundry. Like it's never done.
I mean, that's analogous to a house, right? Someone could spend 10, 20 million, 100 million, doesn't matter. You and I could go through any house we've ever built and compile a list of 50 things you could do better. And I'm not saying good enough or any of that. That's a separate conversation. But like you get my point. Like, that's why like the punch list, like we do an internal punch list like you guys do. I'm sure you walk it with your team and you punch it, and that's great. But like, when you're doing the final thing, and there's certain things you're like, that's not acceptable, let's fix that. But like, you're kind of never done. And like, it's a hard thing because like, there's also nothing that's perfect. Like I don't believe the client is always right. I don't believe in perfection because it doesn't exist. But like, it doesn't mean we don't do an amazing job. It doesn't mean we don't care to the nth degree. But I recently, someone brought up this thing like, oh, the client's all right. And I said, you know what? I'm going to disagree. I'm going to stop you right there. I said, the client is not always right. Are you telling me if the client says like, fire that guy, you should fire that guy? I mean, maybe, but it's not his call, and maybe he's wrong. And like, I guess my point is like, there's very few things that are absolute. And anyway, it gets to your point, Tyler, it's never all done. There's always something to do.
No. And like, as soon as you think you're done, something else comes up. So I think it's being able to roll with it. In what instance do you feel that the client, that's something that Nick and I are very different. Like Nick I'll bend over backwards for clients when I feel like it's reciprocated. But if it's not, I'm like, I'm not going to do for you if you continue to treat me like crap. And Nick will just sit there sometimes and take it and is like way too nice. In what situations do you feel you have to dig your heels in and be like, hey?
I think the hard part is like, I look back at my best clients and there's nothing I wouldn't do for them, but they also don't ask for it. And then you look at some of your worst clients and they ask for the stars.
Yeah.
Forget the moon. They want the stars. And you're just like, it's never enough. I have a client right now, a past client, and it's hard for me. I have pretty thick skin, but I would say the last 24 is actually the hardest year of my career, other than 2009 or 10. From building, Curious Builder was like a shot of adrenaline, espresso, and all good things. Like I think it allowed me to have a lot of time to devote energy and resources to what the collectives have become and the wellness. And I've had so much time to have all these iterations and this free, like I'll look back 5 years from now and be like, wow, had I not had that really slow year in building, there's no way I would have been able to do some of the things that I'm trying to do. We'll see if they're successful, but to try to do. But because we had like 10 or 15 million in revenue, which my average revenue is probably like 6 to 10, depending on which home is which. But like we had probably 15 million slide last year, which is like, it could have been my best year ever to my worst year ever. Yeah. And so I bring, what I'm saying is like, and on top of it, I've got this client that just like, it's like never goes away. And I actually got to the point where I've never had this with any client. I actually blocked them on all forms of communication because it got so over the top. To say I couldn't handle it was not a healthy place. I mean,
after the job was completed,
2 years after. No, I built the home 2 years ago.
They're the same people who send their food back.
Just eat or go to the different restaurants. Tyler, I like you. Like even if you don't like it, the maitre d' comes by. Yeah. How was your meal? And you're like,
it was great. Don't say a word. Shut up.
That's wow. Hey, common ground, Tyler. Look at this. We're simpatico.
This is all. I wanted this medium rare, and it looks like it's more medium.
Well, dude, that came up on Unreasonable Hospitality, Nick. Remember? The guy sent it back and it actually was medium. The client or the maitre d' or the server disagreed with the person, and then after they made a note in the system, ridiculous service, but they said basically this client thinks that medium rare is medium, and so next time when he comes in, to make the anyway, long story short, but this client, I can't, to answer your question, how far do you go? I feel like my clients, I've only had 2 bad ones. So it's just the ones you talk about. And so like for 20 years, I've had 2, like that is for 100 plus clients to have only 2, like that's amazing, I think. And so, but they use my humanity. They use my kindness. I am not prepared the way I would like to be prepared to deal with somebody that is so unethical. And so, Nick, it's a little bit like that guy you told me about who knew he was going to screw you when he signed your contract because you didn't have your labors defined. That's all I'm thinking about. Yeah. And like, he knew the moment he signed it, he was going to screw you. These people, I only have, I think, like 2 red flags that because people ask me all the time, what would you do if you look backwards? And it's like, I'm not sure I would have seen it. Maybe a little orange, but I didn't see red, because if I saw red, I don't know what I would have done. Maybe I would. Yeah. Maybe you'd like to think you did something. Maybe, but I didn't. And it's the relationship between people. Brad Levitt talked about it one time where he had a client swear at his wife, and he said, "I'm done. I'm out right now." anyone that would talk to their wife that way is not someone I'll work with. And he was gone. And I've told that story a few times because it's never happened to me, but I appreciate, that's pretty obvious. Like that one would be like, okay, even I, I'm too optimistic. I don't see this. And I think what happens is I think the best of people, which is probably the way I'd rather go through life. But every once in a while you get somebody like this, and it's just, they use your humanity and they just beat you with it. And like, oh, you're builder of the year. Oh, you say you're so good. Oh, you're so conscious. And it's just like, nonstop. And so anyway, for me, I had to block him. So my PM, I've said, you say the word and I'll block him for you too, because he's very calm and he's good with them. But like, there's been some, not lawsuits, but just lawyer stuff on some, the problem is like 10% of what they've said is real. 90% of it is just craziness. But it's that when you mix truth with lies, or, a dose of craziness, it becomes very difficult to find your way through this path. And it's so exhausting. It takes so much energy. And while none of these have gone to like full lawsuits, and I know some builders probably listening are laughing like, oh, I get lawsuits all the time. And like, the thing that nobody talks about, and someday, we do consulting too. So someday this, I guess, is my training for consulting, is like, nobody tells you that when you get into a situation like this, like it's 2 years, 3 years, maybe longer of like emotional, like you don't even know you're sort of carrying that backpack of emotional weight. And then you disengage. That's why I'm so passionate about this wellness sector. Because if I don't have that, I can't deal with this. And I really, really, really need that balance, because then I can show up. And because, we all have to do hard things. Yeah, not every client's great. That's fine. I can deal with most people. But anyway, I went on too long with that vent.
If you're used to dealing with that too, it's much easier. Like you said, there's
maybe,
a lot of people like that.
Maybe.
That's just run of the mill. I know that I struggle with the same thing. It's like when I have my biggest thing in life and in business is when I feel I'm being taken advantage of, where it's like I'll help anyone and do anything for anyone and bend over backwards. But when I feel as though it's not reciprocated or you're taking advantage of me, I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else. And so when you have those clients, it is really, really difficult to accept that. And I think you internalize a lot of that and say, well, I wouldn't do it this way, or I would, that wouldn't be me. And I don't know if that's the right path forward. But I think that, it is tough to deal with those things, especially when you have 100 clients and only 2 of them are bad. Like, you are not set up to be handling those crappy clients.
It's hard. And and again, back to my favorite quote of last year, boundaries create freedom. I think I've done stuff in my contract and in my life that I didn't realize were a benefit. I tell my clients, I will not answer the phone after 5 o'clock. If you, you can't go to the dentist at 9 o'clock at night. Like, we're running, you guys talk about this all the time, but like, I have found those things to be so helpful. We have right in our contract that texting is not an acceptable form of communication. No change orders or things like that. Like, you could text, obviously you can text us and say like, hey, I'm running late for a meeting, or like, hey, could we move that? Like, that's what texting is for, in my opinion. But, pages and pages and pages of text is just, it's crazy. And so I also want to protect my people. Like, I don't want my project manager or my account managers or my marketing people to burn out because, and there are some people, like, you're just better walking away. And like, when I think like lawyers, I don't know how lawyers do it, because even though they're not really the direct one, like you usually don't call a lawyer when things are going great. You call them when things are gone, either protect you or things have gotten too bad already. And so it's like, I asked my lawyer about this. He's like, well, why do you think in movies they're depicted in 2 places, the courtroom and the bar? He's like, which I thought was pretty funny. Speaking of stereotypes.
Yeah, I feel like we all have them. You have your ball of energy. There's no way to put that any other way. And it's refreshing. I know Nick and I, we discuss, we've been doing this podcast thing for a handful of years, and at times you get stuck in this routine of doing things over and over again, and you don't realize the way that it's taking shape, or it becomes routine, it becomes mundane. And we went into this year saying that we want to switch things up some, that we want to change the pace, we want to bring a little bit more energy and just tackle some bigger topics other than getting somebody on the podcast and pitching their company and what they do and what systems they use and what process, which is important. I think that there's a lot of people who listen for that sake, but I think that Nick and I have the experience and the ability to bring a different angle to this. And I think that it worked out well because you were not scheduled for today and we had a different guest on. And not to say that Ryan wouldn't have been a great guest, but to kick off the new year with your energy and your spirit and what you're doing for the industry is really exciting. And I'm glad that it worked out that way.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And I don't think either one of you are coming to Sonic Camp, but maybe I'll convince one of you guys to come to Bootcamp. Bootcamp's going to be cool.
Mark, I will tell you to be.
I know you're not coming.
No,
you're not coming.
It's not that. It's like you posted about the Sonic Camp maybe a week or two ago, and I was this close, and the date didn't work, and I was like, and I almost texted you, and I was like, dude, I need to go. Like right now.
Honestly, though, if you want to come at a different time,
I can't. I might take you up on it, but
but I'll get you there. But bring Meg, bring the wife. It's cool. Come for like a couple days.
My wife's a pain in the ass.
Well,
she's not. Are you near the ocean? Oh, you're not. Okay, not interested.
Like we're just by straight, a frozen ocean.
Nope.
I mean, what percentage of the world's fresh water is right here in Minnesota? You guys are going to be coming here when you're long and dead. Your kids are coming here for sure because Lake Superior's got a lot of it.
Mark, 2 weeks ago, she was like, hey, I've made up my mind. This winter will be the first winter. We're not going to go anywhere. We're going to save our trip and we're going to go away in April. We're going to go down to South Carolina, see her cousin, stay down there for like a week and a half or something like that. I'm like, great. I got a text yesterday. Hey, so I was thinking about Indy's birthday. Indy's 3. She's turning 4. I think it would be fun to go somewhere warm. I was like, what? She was like, I just think like, I'm like, you want to go somewhere warm. And that's like, you're just like masking it by saying our 4-year-old wants to spend her
I'd say yes either way.
in Puerto Rico. Like,
great. Sounds awesome. I'm in.
I was like, sure. I'm like, yeah, we can like.
By the way, before we can really appreciate the warmth, can we detour through Minneapolis for 24 hours?
Can I
on our way down? Because we'd really appreciate the warmth after we, dip in the lake.
Yeah, I really want some walleye.
I'll give you some walleye.
I know
some
you
pizza.
will.
I mean, evidently I'm making pizza for you guys too. So
I laughed about the pizza.
You're to come and heckle your wife.
If I bought like all I did, your kids are exactly the same age as mine.
Right.
I just picture like making pizza, taking it out, cutting it, putting it on a plate, giving it to my kid, and my kid being like, I don't like this.
Yeah, I just want regular pizza.
Can you get the pizza from the store we like? Like,
no, my kids will eat the table. They'll probably eat the plates.
No, my kids are so annoying. Like it's like
they just want cheese pizza. They want nothing fun on it. They just want.
I don't like the way
pizza.
you cook rice, Dad. The way Mom cooks it is way better. It's like
so funny. Oh, that's so funny. No, the ironic part, Tyler, it'd be interesting to see because like the ironic part because my wife is a lovely person and people love her and rightly so. But it's like, I think the reason, the classic introvert thing, right, is you have to push out a lot of energy and so it costs you a lot to interact with people versus like I get energy from you. Right. And so, I think for her, the ironic part is like when Melissa goes a place, like it's like the salmon flocking of what is it
Capistrano.
Thank you, Capistrano. Like they all just beeline it for her. Like there'll be a horde of them coming. Like she's out of their cave. Let's talk to her. So I'm curious. I mean, you're kind of a hybrid, but you probably lean more on the introvert side, Tyler. Correct me if I'm wrong. But like, do you find that people gravitate towards you? When you're in a public setting, or are you okay?
I don't know if I put off those vibes, to be honest. But no, I definitely feel the energy being depleted from me. Like it requires a lot of me. When I get back from any of those trips, it's like I need to emotionally detach. Like IBS is the most exhausted I am.
Oh yeah,
I get sick from it. I'm just like passed out. I need to actually recover from that. And it's just from being on for so long. I think that sometimes people like, I think that I'm a hybrid. I won't go overboard. Like I'll be more outspoken, but on a lot of those events, if people meet me, there's probably others in the room like you who are going to be way more energetic, that they'll probably end up flocking to, where they're like, he's
No,
just
actually,
in the mud.
I would disagree. So I've learned something finally after 44 years from my wife. It's not that I don't appreciate one. I enjoy this kind of conversation. I do appreciate the depth. I think the problem for most extroverts is like, we love a lot of things. We have a lot of energy. We have a lot of ideas. But we sort of want to share it with everybody. Yeah. And so like, it comes, I shouldn't speak for everyone. I'll just speak for myself. It comes from a genuine place. Like I want, like when let's say I was going to do a pizza deal, like, or I would want everyone to enjoy it because it's something like, I just enjoy bringing people together. I'm not going to say it's my superpower, but I just love bringing people together. I love the collectives. I love Contractor Coalition. I just love bringing like-minded people together. It gives me a lot of joy. Maybe I'm like an old grandpa. I just want to see all the grandkids together playing around the fire. Like and like, while yes, I like to be in there, but I just want to see people interacting. Like nothing makes me happier than to see like, a part of the group like break off and just have some intimate conversations. And if they come away feeling like they got something, like I feel like that was really empowering for everyone. I feel good that opportunity existed. And now as I'm older, like the Monday meetup at IBS, the old Mark would have, I would have had 30-second conversations and got nothing from anybody, but everyone would have said but that's like vanity. That's ego, that everyone just saw you. What's the point of that? Now I'm taking a page out of my wife's book, or Cool Hand Luke Tyler, and I'm going to lean up against, outside, I'm going to sit on the outside in a comfortable area with 2 walls behind me so I can like see where people are coming from. And I'm going to wait for them. I'm just going to have some good, I'm okay with like 1 or 2 really deep, really good conversations. I don't need and that's a new revelation for me. That's not something I used to do, and I have to say it's way better. I appreciate
that's
it more.
That's my speed. I don't want to go have, I'd rather have 1 or 2 conversations throughout the course of an event than go spend 2 minutes with each person. What do you do? How old are your kids? What's your family like? It's exhausting.
You should, you should do, make up a QR code like on a card and be like, and just hand it to people and be like, here's my 30-second speech. Yeah. It takes you to a landing page, pictures of my kids and what I'm up to, what I ate last week and how my Christmas vacation was.
You're totally going to make a t-shirt with this QR code on it. You're just like,
definitely.
Before we talk,
here's my bio.
Honestly, that would be pretty a baller idea. Yeah. Honestly, I think I might have to do that.
Let's cut to the chase.
That's the name of the t-shirt. Cut to the chase.
Cut to the chase. What do you want to know? That's pretty funny. Well, we could talk obviously forever. Thank you for having me on and talking about, I think much needed, important things. Hopefully people enjoyed what they got to listen to, and they can find out more on the website and
where do you want everyone to find you?
I would say, for those who don't, we didn't even do an intro. My name's Mark Williams. I'm a builder in Minnesota. Yeah. Okay. So we don't need to worry about that. Obviously the Curious Builder podcast is going to be the landing page we just redid the whole website in terms of making it. So we have the collectives, which are now in like 3 other states: Atlanta, Brad Levitt's leading one in Arizona. We've got one down in Texas. So that's an educational thing, kind of like a mini contractor coalition. That's pretty cool. But the retreats are under the retreat tab. The one in Zion National Park is the middle of May. And then you can read about all the details there. And then the Sauna Camp is just 2 weeks away. That's on the 24th in January. And we'll probably do 2 a year. I think Sauna Camp will probably be something. It's pretty low lift here in Minnesota. We'll probably do that every year. So if you miss it this year, like Nick did, he can come back. He'll be there. Him and his wife will be there in 26. And then... and then I don't know what we're going to do for Bootcamp 2.0. We might move it around the United States, or obviously actually I've had considered Costa Rica, except Morgan beat me to the punch. And so, but there you go. Meg will come to the coast, have her come to, I'm sure she'd love to hang out with a bunch of builders on the coast, but maybe I just need to bring Meg on the Curious Builder podcast, dive deep. So you Meg, how do we invite her? I'll give you her email. I'll invite her. I'll tell you what, I'll invite both of your wives. Actually, that would actually be a fun podcast. I'll have my wife. We'll see if the 4 of them, I'll do an interview with 3 of them, and I could interview that. I'll have to think.
If you can get my wife on the podcast, I will pay. I will literally pay you.
All right. Well, we'll talk. We'll negotiate terms. Give me your email. I will ask.
All right, Mark. We'll see you in the corner of the MGM
your time.
at the Builder Show.
Yeah, I'll be the guy on the back wall putting off the vibes.
I'll be there right next to you. Cool hand. Look, I'll pick out the other corner so we can divide and conquer.
See you, Mark.
All right, guys. See you, boys.
I feel like Mark said, we could have talked for hours. But I'm glad we talked about, I mean, the mental side of it, the mental fortitude that everything takes, not even just building. I think that's really where I want to focus this year on, like becoming, my mantra in building has always been being intentional. But I think, in our conversations and even the conversation we just had with Mark, it's like being intentional with everything, being present with your kids, your family, your spouse, the decisions you make about, choosing to be anxious about shit, right? Like, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts.
I mean, especially with everything that we're trying to do, and the goal for the podcast from day one has been to help people. And I think that, 2024 is a huge year of building and learning and a lot of changes. And I think that it presents opportunity to switch gears and offer some different insight and perspective, and obviously sprinkle a lot of that in. But I think that, I just turned 39. I'm going to be 40 next winter, and I want to make substantial life changes. And I think my 30s were spent putting the wheels in motion, and I'm ready to start like figuring some life things out aside from business and everything else. And it doesn't make sense not to bring everyone along with me on that journey. And I think that if we can find some guests that have experienced that, where I can dig into that and I can learn from them, I think that we can pass that conversation on, and everyone can benefit from that. Personally, in my life, I'm just looking, that's the type of mentorship I'm looking for, and the lessons that I'm looking to learn, and how to be not only a good businessman, a good podcast host, but a good father, a good human being, how to be happy, not to like suffer emotionally all the time. And I think that there's a lot of good quality, strong, powerful conversations to be had based around just being the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I love that. With that being said, if you guys have someone that you would recommend for the podcast this year, we're always open to suggestions. We haven't been upfront about that in the past, but email us, hello@moderncraftsman.co. We'd be open to we're open to speaking with anyone, especially that has a interesting story that, can lead to an interesting conversation for you guys. That being said, we'll see you guys next week.